Chapter 321, Fighting Junyu. Junyu stood on the stage where his entire body felt like a sword. He looked at Yi Yun and smiled. "I've been paying close attention to you for a long while." Yi Yun looked at Junyu as his heart jumped. "Amongst all the Tai Divine City cultivators, you are the one I want to fight the most. Now, without anyone interfering with our battle, you will be able to fight in your best condition, so this battle is how I like it. I have been looking forward to this battle with you," Junyu said as he took a weapon out from his interspatial ring. It was a sword. The sword was extremely long. It was even longer than the 1,000 army saber. The sword's blade was broad, its width was about a foot long. The blade's central ridge was about an inch thick. It was an extremely heavy sword. The audience gasped when they saw the sword. Not many of them had seen a sword with such an exaggerated size like that before. Even if they did, it was usually an ornamental sword. They had never seen one being used to kill enemies. This sword looked like it was like a door that was split in the middle, with the two halves connected together. It did not look easy for a person to hold such a sword. How do you brandish such a heavy sword? It cannot be used agilely, a Tai Divine City warrior said. Although there was a saying that the longer a weapon was, the stronger it was, it did not really mean that it was that much better the longer it became. A sword that exceeded one's height by more than 100% would be severely constricted them when it was brandished. But just as the Tai Divine City warrior was midway through his words, he shut himself up. This was because he was shocked at what he saw. Junyu had casually released his hand and the sword began floating in midair. Following that, Junyu landed on the sword's blade with a gentle leap. What? Many of the audience were dumbfounded. You could do that? Wasn't this flying on a sword? Yuan Foundation Realm warriors could not really fly, but by standing on the large sword, Junyu was able to fly in any direction. This was no doubt the advantage of having a large sword. When one's insight into the laws reaches a certain realm, they are able to use all sort of bizarre combat techniques. This was the power of the laws. "I'm going to attack." Before Junyu attacked, he warned Yi Yun, showing his great confidence. Sha! A sword beam flashed as Junyu flew towards Yi Yun while standing on the large sword. This sword's speed was extremely fast. It was very difficult to tell its trajectory. Just as the sword was about 30 feet away from Yi Yun, a ka sound rang, and the sword's body split. What? Yi Yun constricted his pupils. He saw that the large sword had split into 24 flying swords. The huge sword was not one sword, but it was made up of 24 swords. No wonder it was that big. In this split second, Yi Yun did not have time to think carefully. The 24 flying swords had surrounded him. Minute subtlety. Yi Yun's body began creating multiple afterimages as he retreated hurriedly. Sha! 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 There were about 20 sword marks on the purple tungsten tiles on the ground. At the same time, two of the flying swords flew close to Yi Yun's cheek and body. The sharp sword wind cut through Yi Yun's Yuan Qi protection and two bloody slashes appeared on Yi Yun's face and body. Your speed is very fast, too bad. Junyu gripped both his hands, ka. The purple tungsten tiles underneath Yi Yun's feet sprouted out metallic poles about the thickness of a thumb. These metallic poles immediately formed a cage the moment Yi Yun landed, trapping him in it. How are you going to dodge this time? With a thought, more than 20 flying swords flew towards Yi Yun, who was in the metallic cage. At that split moment, Yi Yun roared, and his body's radiant sun qi erupted like a volcano. The power of the pure yang flames burnt the metallic cage and turned it into molten metal. Yi Yun flew out of it. Sha! 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 The place Yi Yun was originally standing was instantly diced. And at this moment, Yi Yun changed directions in the air. With the sonic deathblade in hand, he attacked from top to bottom while charging straight at Junyu. The saber truth's 32 words, reigning supreme. An emerald green saber beam with its formidable presence tore through the air, emitting a sharp howling whistle. The sonic deathblade could kill people just with its sound waves. Against this attack, Junyu remained calm. He stretched out his palm and blocked Yi Yun's attack with just his bare palms. What? The audience were shocked. But just at the moment when Yi Yun's saber was about to slash at Junyu's palm, a huge metallic shield appeared in front of Junyu's palms. Boom! The sonic deathblade slashed on the metallic shield. The half-foot-thick shield was split into two by the sonic deathblade. But the remaining saber force had dissipated. Good saber technique. Junyu gasped in admiration from the bottom of his heart. He had always been proud, but against a younger Yi Yun, whose cultivation level was lower than his, Junyu was still unable to suppress him. Yi Yun's insight into the saber truths startled Junyu. The exchanges between the two were so fast that the audience were too engrossed to take a breath. Junyu moved his fingers and the huge metallic shield dissipated, turning into flowing metal that covered Junyu's entire body. Slowly, it formed into a metallic armor. This metallic armor was much more exaggerated than the armor Junyu wore. It was impossible to estimate its weight, but Yi Yun knew that the metallic armor would not give Junyu the slightest feeling of heaviness. This was because Junyu could manipulate it as he wished. This battle armor specially made from Taitsang metal. It follows my every wish. If I were to inject Yuan Qi into it, it will be indestructible. As long as your Yuan Qi is weaker than mine, you have no way of breaking through my defense. Even though my cultivation level is suppressed to the early stage of the Yuan Foundation realm, the amount of Yuan Qi I have far exceeds yours. Therefore, you will not be able to hurt me. Junyu's voice was calm as if he was narrating a fact. Can't break through your defense? A flash beamed in Yi Yun's eyes. He was always very confident in his own attacking power. Let me try. Yi Yun took one step forward before his body transformed into a beam of light, heading straight for Junyu. Boom! The radiant Sun Qi exploded behind Yi Yun, forming the phantom image of the Tang Valley. Yi Yun's sonic deathblade began burning with pure yang flames. Saber truth's 32 words, one with the saber. Cha! With a slash, the pure yang flames exploded, flooding everyone's vision with white light. Yi Yun's saber had made its impact on Junyu's armor. From the right shoulder to the left thigh, the blade edge slashed past. The vicinity of the blade mark on the metallic armor had been melted. There was a shocking 1-meter-long blade mark. Oh! Yi Yun was surprised. He did not hold back with this attack, but at the moment the sonic deathblade slashed on Junyu, he felt Yuan Qi surge in Junyu's armor. Junyu's Yuan Qi had combined with the metallic essence as one, and had greatly dissipated his radiant Sun Qi. He had not been able to hurt Junyu's body. Good attack. Junyu gritted his teeth. He began circulating his Yuan Qi. After enduring Yi Yun's attack, the veins on his forehead bulged, making him look ferocious. But, you are still lacking by just a bit, Junyu grinned. A flash appeared in his eyes. Cha! 24 flying swords around Junyu suddenly came stabbing towards Yi Yun. Boom! The 24 flying swords impaled the purple tungsten ground. With his Yuan Qi exploding, Yi Yun used his large success stage of minute subtlety. However, he was still hit by the energy. He flew back, and when he landed, he moved back another tens of feet. His qi and blood was in chaos. Junyu's defense was too strong. It was completely on a different level from Kuei-yu, who Yi Yun had previously defeated. Junyu was not bragging about the so-called absolute defense. Anyone whose Yuan Qi was inferior to his could not break through his armor. At this moment, Junyu's armor had already begun repairing. The large saber mark that Yi Yun had left behind was slowly disappearing. Soon, the saber mark had completely disappeared, and the armor looked as good as new. It was as if Yi Yun had never slashed on it before. The Taya Divine City audience did not know what to say upon seeing this scene. This kind of manipulation of the laws was too terrifying. If one could not break through Junyu's defense in one strike, then he would just restore it again. Junyu! Junyu! The Yunlong Divine Kingdom cultivators began cheering. The female cultivators were the ones who screamed the most passionately. In the world of warriors, the men who were strong and had extraordinary talent would easily win the hearts of women. Junyu is sure to win. Wipe the Taya Divine City. Kill all these useless fools. People from the Yunlong Divine Kingdom began shouting even louder, while the people from the Taya Divine City did not look so good. At this moment, Junyu was indeed mighty. He was wearing armor that had incredulous weight, and 24 flying swords were revolving around him. These swords were all of different weights and lengths. The presence they gave off was full of power. With his strong defense and incredible attacking strength, it made others not be able to muster the courage to fight him. Yi Yun's expression was solemn. This opponent was indeed tricky. The 5 elemental laws may be lower in grade than the pure Yang laws, but when the other party's insight into the laws exceeded his, then the power the laws would give could not be measured by the differing grades in the laws. Yi Yun only wanted to use his aspect totem as a last resort, as it was too shocking. He would have to come up with explanations if he were to use it. But now, it seemed like typical attacks would not be able to beat Junyu. By controlling the metallic armor, Junyu began to slowly fly. Up in the air, he looked down at Yi Yun with a commanding presence. The 24 swords were around his body, arranged in a manner similar to a peacock's revealed tail. Your speed is very fast and your movement techniques are strong. Even when I power my swords with all my strength, I still can't seriously injure you, so I have no choice but to use my last sword. Junyu said this as his body began sparking with streams of rainbow light. A purple energy sword appeared from behind him before landing in his hand. This energy sword was thin and long. It looked like a purple light beam had shot out from Junyu's hand. Many in the audience were greatly alarmed seeing the purple beam. Aspect Totem, this is Junyu's Aspect Totem. A sword-shaped Aspect Totem was the Aspect Totem that swordsmen dreamed of. By conjuring his Aspect Totem, Junyu was prepared to go all out. Chapter 322, Luminous Moon Against the Radiant Sun. Translator, Sitalan. Editor, Sitalan. Being covered in metallic heavy armor and with the totem beam sword in hand, Junyu looked like a war god. Yi Yun. I've conjured my aspect totem to fight you, even though I am 1 realm higher than you. You should be proud. Junyu's voice resounded throughout the arena. It was as shockingly powerful. My totem sword is 100% faster than my flying swords. Your movement technique is extremely fast, but now we shall see how you are going to dodge my sword. As Junyu said this, the Yunlong Divine Kingdom warriors began to cheer. Junyu! Attack! Many of them were shouting as the atmosphere went into a frenzy. In the world of warriors, nothing was more exciting than watching experts fight on the same stage. National pride also rested on the outcome of this battle, so their emotions were easily incited. With the beam sword in hand, Junyu raised it above his head. Although he had an indifferent attitude, he could not help but become intoxicated by the excited cheers. He gave a deep roar as the 24 swords around him shot out like raindrops in a storm. After Junyu conjured his aspect totem, the 24 swords were much faster than before. Yi Yun constricted his pupils and quickly retreated. Sha! 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 The purple tungsten tiles where Yi Yun originally stood cracked. At the same moment, Junyu's beam sword already came slashing down at Yi Yun. This sword had locked onto Yi Yun's location and it came at him with an irresistible force. Extreme Kill, Vault of Heaven Luminous Moon Sword. The moment Junyu brandished his sword, Heaven-Earth Yuan-Chi gathered behind him, forming an emerald-green phantom image that resembled the luminous moon. The luminous moon dangling in the sky was covered in mist, making it look mysterious, as if it was something untouchable. As for the totem sword in Junyu's hands, it suddenly rose up. The sword became like a light pillar, shooting straight into the clouds. This slash from the sword seemed to be able to split apart the vaults of heaven. At that moment, Junyu's domineering armor and his beautiful swordplay made a perfect combination. It created a strong visual impact, making the cheers in the crowd reach a crescendo. Yun's mind was as still as water when facing this sword. With both of his hands holding the saber, he circulated his body's energy as the radiant sun chi began to burn. Yun knew that the Saber Truth's 32-word saber intent and the Taya sacred technique were not enough to withstand Junyu's attack. Neither could they break through Junyu's absolute defense. Yun sent his thoughts into the purple crystal. Within the purple crystal's core was a small flame quietly burning. This small flame was the pure Yang spirit Yun had captured in the burning hell. The pure Yang spirit was a divine item that had been condensed from the infinite pure Yang essence within fallen Stargate. Even sages would find it difficult to refine it in a few hundred years alone. And now, it was sealed within the purple crystal, becoming the purple crystal's own source of pure Yang energy. Your strength shall be given to me. In his spiritual world, Yun looked straight at the pure Yang spirit within the purple crystal. His voice had a domineering aspect to it. The purple crystal began to gather Heaven-Earth Yuan-Chi as energy began to rapidly circulate. With an explosive boom, what was at first a small flame quietly burning suddenly shot up. Extremely pure Yang energy surged throughout Yun's meridians. At that moment, burning pure Yang Chi poured out from all of the pores of his body as he circulated the burning flame. It was as if Yun's body had changed into that of the sun. The Saber Truth's 32 words, reigning supreme. With the sonic deathblade in hand, Yun's slash was as if a mighty god had descended, as if a sun had entered the mortal realm. The Tang Valley image behind Yun was like a huge picture scroll. It covered the entire arena. If one looked from up high, they would see that, above the arena's dome, was a burning Yuan-Chi flame. Ha! Junyu was greatly alarmed, but he still powered his Vault of Heaven luminous moonsword and slashed at Yun. The luminous moon against the radiant sun, metal against pure Yang. Boom! A terrifying explosion happened, and the world turned silent. The expressions of everyone present froze as they could only stare. They looked at the pure Yang flame, burning in the air. It was like as if a sun had swallowed the luminous moon. Metal melted while pure Yang Chi flared. Junyu let out a deep growl as his totem sword was split apart by Yun's slash. Yun's saber did not stop and carried on slashing at Junyu's armor. From his shoulder to his thigh, the saber slashed diagonally. Pang! Junyu flew out and heavily slammed into the purple tungsten walls by the side of the Divine Wilderness stage. A foot-long purple tungsten wall was brought down by Junyu's impact. Ka. Junyu's battle armor was torn apart. His metallic armor could not withstand the burning power of the pure Yang energy. It began to melt from the middle while Yun's pure Yang saber chi entered deeply into Junyu's body, burning all his internal organs and meridians. Junyu spit out a mouthful of blood as his face flushed red while his body trembled. A bloody line went from his shoulder to his thigh as blood spurted out, but it was instantly incinerated by the burning hot armor. Yun's attack had completely cut through Junyu's flesh and ribs. Besides his saber injury, there was the internal injuries caused by the pure Yang Chi. The injuries he suffered were horrible. Yun landed on the tip of his feet with the sonic deathblade in hand. The sonic deathblade was not covered in blood but had turned heated red from the pure Yang Chi. The attack Yun used was powered by the pure Yang spirit's energy. As a medium between the Heaven-Earth Yuan-Chi and the pure Yang spirit, Yun had consumed a lot of Yuan-Chi himself. At that moment, the pure Yang Chi around him was still burning. The rising golden flames left a long trail from Iyun's descent. They looked like the beautiful scene of a phoenix's tail feathers fluttering. The entire audience turned silent upon seeing this. Especially the Yunlong Divine Kingdom warriors. They went from frenzied cheers to dead silence. Everything had happened in just a few seconds, resulting in many of their frenzied expressions still being fixed on their faces. Junyu was defeated? At the last moment, Junyu had conjured his aspect totem and went all out, but he still lost to Iyun even at his peak. The Yunlong Divine Kingdom warriors could not believe it. Many of the obsessed girls that were crazy over Junyu still had their mouths agape. Many of them had admired Junyu for a long time. He was the unbeatable war god in their hearts, but now Junyu had been defeated. How was Iyun's last attack so powerful? Many people were privately discussing. In the beginning, Iyun clearly could not cut through Junyu's defenses, but his last attack actually defeated him in one strike. I do not know. Maybe this is his hidden move. People could only comprehend it this way. The pure Yang spirit was hidden within the purple crystal which was within Iyun's body. When it spewed out pure Yang energy, it was not much different from the pure Yang energy that Iyun usually gave off. As such, no one noticed it. They only felt that Iyun's Yang Chi's purity and strength rose a level during this sudden explosive display. Medical personnel rushed to the side of the stage and began checking on Junyu's injuries. Junyu's was badly injured. In the last instant, Iyun was fighting against Junyu, who was at his peak. He could not go easy or he would definitely be defeated. Iyun versus Junyu. Victor, Iyun. The Taiya Divine City law enforcer announced the outcome of the battle. Even the law enforcer, who was usually cold, was so excited that his voice actually trembled. The victory in this match meant that the teenager group champion most likely belonged to the Taiya Divine Kingdom. After a few moments of silence, the audience burst out into a tumultuous cheer. Iyun! Iyun! The Taiya Divine City warriors were all shouting loudly. Their expressions were that of joy and frenzy. From the beginning, as the Taiya Divine City warriors were lacking in strength, they did not bear too much hope. When they suddenly obtained the final victory, this unexpected joy made them become ecstatic. This kid sure fought well. Ha ha ha. In the elder stands, Song Yen began laughing loudly. The grin on his face nearly reached his ear lobes. Iyun's victory made this old man, who did not have much of an image, become highly conceited. He suddenly recalled something and looked sideways at the two Yunlong Divine Kingdom elders who previously looked down on Iyun. That expression seemed to read, "The two of you, shall we talk about my ass from yesterday?" The two elders, whose expressions were already ugly, now saw Song Yan's wretched smile dangling in front of them like a chrysanthemum flower. It looked as if they had swallowed a huge housefly, and it was the type that had a green head. They could only ignore Song Yan. They knew that, the moment they responded, they would end up being ridiculed. Iyun really gave me a great surprise. Even the calm and indifferent Taiya Divine City's city lord was in a good mood as he gave a heartfelt laughter. Beside him, the 7-star pagoda owner's face was now gloomy. The outcome of the battle had completely gone beyond his expectations. He had originally proposed the alliance tournament because he knew of the Yunlong 72 pagoda's few geniuses in the younger generation. They were invincible against their peers. And with the Taiya Divine City facing the pressure of the shepherd boy appearing within the borders of the Taiya Divine Kingdom, they had no way but to compromise. However, now, Junyu's failure was a severe blow to the 7-star pagoda owner. With his loss, the plan of taking 60% of the seats came to an end. The 7-star pagoda owner took a deep breath and said to the middle-aged scholar, "The teenager group is just the beginning. Sir City Lord, are you not laughing too soon?" The 7-star pagoda owner did not mince his words towards the middle-aged scholar. He believed that, in the young adult and the overall groups, the Taiya Divine City did not have anyone left. Yao Dao and Yang Qian were far from enough. The Yunlong 72 pagodas would sweep it all, leaving the Tai Divine Kingdom with nothing. Unfortunately, they had lost the teenager group. Although the Yunlong 72 pagodas would eventually win, the 7-star pagoda owner could no longer laugh. He had not expected someone like Yi Yun at all. If he knew about him earlier, he would not have separated the teenager and the young adult matches. There would only be an overall group and all the seats would be determined by the overall group's results. Then, no matter how much of a genius Yi Yun was, he would definitely not be able to win against opponents 4 to 5 years older than him. The middle-aged scholar laughed. "I do not ask for much. Your country aimed for the fact that in this year, our Tai Divine City's new crop has yet to come in to replace the old. And, with the pressure from the shepherd boy, you forced me to accept the proposed alliance tournament. However, now that the Tai Divine City has won a third of the seats from your hands, why shouldn't I be laughing?" "Humph." The 7-star pagoda owner snorted and remained silent. He had divided the cultivators into a teenager and young adult group so that he could showcase the strength of the Yunlong 72 pagodas, but he had ended up lifting a stone only to drop it on his own feet. Chapter 323, The Young Adults Battle. Does anyone from the Yunlong Divine Kingdom want to challenge Yi Yun? The referee on the Divine Wilderness stage asked loudly. There were still 4 more people from the Yunlong Divine Kingdom left who had not gone up after Yi Yun defeated Junyu. They were eligible to challenge Yi Yun. The 4 of them had ugly expressions, but none of them really went on stage to fight Yi Yun. The difference in strength was too great. Going up on strength would only end with them being brutally beaten up by Yi Yun. As such, whether they went up on stage or not had lost its meaning. No one answered the referee. After the referee repeated that statement 3 times, he said loudly, "No one from the Yunlong Divine Kingdom is challenging, so I shall now announce that for the Alliance Tournament's Tai Divine Kingdom vs Yunlong Divine Kingdom Teenager Division, the winner is the Tai Divine Kingdom." The referee's voice was excited as the Tai Divine City audience burst out into a tumultuous cheer. This victory was really surprising. Having thought that their Tai Divine City's new crop had yet to come in to replace the old, they had still managed to beat the Yunlong 72 pagodas in the teenager division competition. This result was something to be proud of. But not all the Tai Divine City cultivators were happy. At this moment, Li Hong, Yang Haoran and company's faces were ugly listening to tumultuous cheers. In particular, Yang Haoran was clenching his fist tightly. His nails were lodged deep in his flesh. See his archenemy become the Tai Divine Kingdom's hero, even gaining the attention of the city lord, together with Song Yan, Jin Ge and Yue Wa's support and favor granted to Yi Yun. The hopes of taking revenge on Yi Yun had become a joke. Compared to the aura of being the Tai Divine Kingdom hero, he, with his broken arm, was no different from a lost dog. This difference made Yang Haoran feel anguish that did not need further elaborating. At this moment, the referee on the Divine Wilderness stage was also extremely excited as he announced with an exhilarated voice, "Next, we have the Young Adult Division competition. Yunlong Divine Kingdom and Tai Divine Kingdom will have 15 to 18-year-old cultivators coming to the stage to battle." When the referee said this, the Yunlong Divine Kingdom's audience became excited. After having their moods dampened by Yi Yun, they were filled with anger. Now that it was the Young Adult Division, their Yunlong Divine Kingdom's Young Adult Division was filled with elites. In comparison, the Tai Divine City's Young Adult Division was like a handful of kittens. There was no doubt what the outcome of the battle would be. Yunlong Divine Kingdom is sure to win. Some of the Yunlong Divine Kingdom cultivators shouted loudly. They were looking forward to obtaining revenge for the disgrace they suffered. Wipe them out. Wipe out the Tai Divine City. The Yunlong Divine Kingdom audience was excited. On the Tai Divine Kingdom side, the audience went tit for tat as they cheered as well. The situation looked as if the Tai Divine Kingdom and Yunlong Divine Kingdom audience were almost about to fight. It's really crazy. Yi Yun, who was on the participant benches, sighed upon seeing this scene. But it was reasonable. In his past life, there were some ball-related sports matches where the audience would become so agitated watching the game that they led to stampedes and other accidents. What more, this is a warrior's world. Compared to the sports matches in his previous life, elites battling against each other was a matter of greater importance, and with it came greater excitement. Yi Yun glanced at Song Yan, who was in the elder stands. He transmitted his voice, "Senior Song Yan, I can't participate in the young adult division matches, right?" Song Yan, who was still being highly conceited, was shocked hearing Yi Yun's Yuanqi voice transmission. "No, you can't. However, you can participate in the overall group matches in 2 days." The overall group competition was scheduled in 2 days' time to allow the competitors to rest and heal, allowing them to adjust themselves to their optimum states. "Alright, I got it. Then, I want to go to the Sword Tomb." The Pure Yang Sword Palace's Sword Dao was extremely profound. Yi Yun always felt his understanding of the Sword Dao was still lacking up to this point. The path of martial arts was fraught with dangers and difficulties, and could be said as defying heaven. Yi Yun had to grab every opportunity to strengthen himself. "Sword Tomb? You are going just like that? Aren't you going to watch the young adult division matches?" Song Yan said with a shock. "You sure are grabbing every second." "I'm not going to watch." Yi Yun shook his head. Actually, watching the Yunlong Divine Kingdom's experts' performance before the overall group match was necessary. However, it was not that Yi Yun was being arrogant and underestimating his enemies, but he guessed that the person he really wanted to see would not appear in the upcoming young adult division matches. Even if the person appeared, that person would not go all out. In that case, there was not much difference whether he watched or not. "All right." Song Yan nodded and stood up to guide Yi Yun. At this point, the Yunlong Divine Kingdom audience's cheers had reached a crescendo. From the Yunlong Divine Kingdom cultivators' side, a fatty dressed in yellow jumped onto the Divine Wilderness stage. He raised a fist and shouted loudly, "Yunlong is sure to win! Yunlong is sure to win! Yunlong is sure to win!" The Yunlong Divine Kingdom audience responded like a surging tide. At this moment, the fatty lowered both his hands, motioning for the crowd to be quiet. He gave a faint smile and looked at the Tai Divine Kingdom cultivators. "Today, I will represent the Yunlong Divine Kingdom and declare war on the Tai Divine City." As he said that, he pointed out his index finger and pointed towards the Tai Divine City's side. "Just me alone will be sufficient. Who will fight me? I'll take on as many as you send." The fatty's words were highly rousing and it had a provocative vibe to it. When he declared war in such a domineering and arrogant fashion, the Yunlong Divine Kingdom audience cheered once again. Previously, Yi Yun had won despite being up against 5 people in the teenager division matches. This made them fume inside, but now with the fatty's domineering declaration of war, all the shame they had suffered was being vented. All of them were extremely excited. "Your Tai Divine City may have gone one against many, but so can our Yunlong Divine Kingdom. This darn fatso, who does he think he is?" On the Tai Divine City side, the participants were furious. Yang Qian's expression was extremely ugly. "Is he bullying our Tai Divine City as if we don't exist? What does he mean, take on as many as you send? Those words sound so arrogant. We only have 2 people we can send out for the young adult division. According to the Alliance Tournament's rules, everyone was only allowed 1 defeat. Once they were defeated, they could not carry on participating in the group championships. Previously, in the Tai Divine City Young Adult Division small group matches, 3 of the 4 groups had been wiped out. There was only 1 group left. And in that group, only Yang Qian and Yao Dao remained undefeated. The fatty's words were nicely put, but it was an actual fact, 1 against 2, and that wasn't much of an exaggeration. He is just going with the Yunlong Divine Kingdom audience's wishes. By declaring war in such a manner, he can increase his popularity. This fatso sure is crafty. Yao Dao, who was beside Yang Qian, gave his evaluation. These 2 former rivals were now comrades in arms. Humph. How powerful can a fellow, who just messes around, be? Although there's only 2 of us left in the Tai Divine City Young Adult Division, we will not be defeated by him. I'll go up and finish him off. Yang Qian said as he jumped up the Divine Wilderness stage. I'll challenge you. Yang Qian! Yang Qian! The Tai Divine City cultivators shouted loudly to cheer on Yang Qian. As one of the top-ranked people on the Tai Divine City's Earth roll, he was extremely popular. Yang Qian and Yao Dao were the only hopes that the Tai Divine City Young Adult Division had. He. The fatty looked at Yang Qian as his lips curled into a sinister smile. To establish his reputation, he began with Yang Qian. In a short while, it would be his personal performance. After today's Young Adult Division match, there was no doubt he would become the brightest person in the Yunlong Divine Kingdom. He was looking forward to the fame gained from this one battle. By performing well in the tournament, besides being rewarded, he would also gain the attention of the upper echelons of the Yunlong Divine Kingdom. There were many benefits. The fatty smiled as he subconsciously glanced at the Tai Divine City Teenager Division participant benches. He knew that in 2 days' time, he would meet Yi Yun in the overall group match. He wanted to let his future opponent see his performance. But this glance made his expression go stiff. Because, at this moment, Yi Yun was carrying his sonic deathblade and walking towards the arena's exit. From the fatty's perspective, he could only see Yi Yun's back. What? That kid. The veins on the fatty's forehead bulged. He had been ignored? Yi Yun had actually left the arena without watching his match? Who did he think he was? Seeing Yi Yun leave the arena without even turning back, the fatty's expression turned gloomy. In 2 days' time, I will teach you manners. The fatty clenched his fists and began thinking hateful thoughts. Next, he turned towards Yang Qian and said coldly, Yang Qian, right? I will defeat you in less than 10 moves. The nerve! Yang Qian unsheathed a sword and pointing straight at the fatty's eyebrows. The person who will be defeated is you. Chapter 324, Qianshui Family Clan. As part of the Tai Divine Kingdom's royalty, Yang Qian was the second most important person in the Tai Divine City for this alliance tournament. Yang Qian was always proud, but against someone from the Yunlong Divine Kingdom, he held back his pride and focused all his spirit and mind. Before the battle, he had also gathered information regarding the Yunlong Divine Kingdom geniuses. However, as the alliance tournament had happened too suddenly, and due to the large distance between the Yunlong 72 pagodas and the Tai Divine City, it was difficult to obtain detailed information of the Yunlong 72 pagodas in such a short time. Yang Qian was also unable to use the royal family's powers, so whatever he gathered was just general information. The general information he gathered that dealt with the Yunlong 72 pagodas geniuses was extremely limited. Yang Qian only knew their weapons and commonly used attacks. As for their trump cards and killer moves, Yang Qian was also not able to probe in detail. For example, the information on Jun Yu was very little. And it was same for the fatty in front of him. Yang Qian only knew that this fatty came from a Divine Wilderness mystic tribal clan. Anything related to the Divine Wilderness tribal clans was not simple. They had unknown blood heritage and their tribe's mystic techniques. For example, Kuei Yu, the puppet master from before, was also from a Divine Wilderness mystic tribe. But there was no doubt this fatty was much stronger than Kuei Yu. Although Yang Qian had not lost his presence in this battle, he knew that this battle would be extremely difficult. Let the match begin. With the referee's announcement, light circulated around Yang Qian's body as a tiger appeared behind him. It was Yang Qian's aspect totem. Roar! The tiger roared as Yang Qian rushed forward. While moving forward, his body began burning with flames. It was pure Yang flames. As one of the elites of the Tai Divine City and as a royal house member, Yang Qian's core cultivation technique was also the Tai Sacred technique. Compared to Yun's Tao Sacred Technique, Yang Qian's Tao Sacred Technique was unable to conjure the Tang Valley Radiant Sun Phantom image. However, with his cultivation level being at the mid-stages of the Yuan Foundation realm, the pure Yang flames burning around his body encompassed an even greater area. Phew! Slashing with his sword, the pure Yang flames flared. At the same time, the tiger behind Yang Qian charged at the fatty. The tiger roared and swiped downwards with its sharp claws. The fatty grinned as he stretched out his right hand and blocked the tiger's claw attack with just his arm alone. Courting death. Yang Qian's expression revealed killing intent. This fatty obviously did not want his arm anymore by using it to block the totem tiger's sharp claws. Pang! With a powerful impact, the fatty's body shook as he took a half step back. He pressed his feet into the purple tungsten ground, creating a deep footprint. The cloth on his arm was torn, but his arm remained fine. The corners of Fatty's mouth formed a grin. He had really used his arm to block the totem tiger's attack. What? Yang Qian was greatly alarmed. How was this possible? The totem tiger behind him was a mutated golden-eyed tiger. This kind of desolate beast's strength was immense. It could smash a tiny mountain with a swipe of its claw. It was a strength that really could smash a mountain. The aspect totem behind him may be weaker than a real mutated golden-eyed tiger, but its attack was not something that a Yuan Foundation realm warrior could withstand with his body. Yang Qian believed that even Qin Haotian would not have such terrifying physical strength. Could this be the mystic technique that belonged to the fatty's divine wilderness mystic tribe? Yang Qian may have been awed by it, but his attack was treated seriously. He slashed with his sword as the pure Yang flames flared at the fatty. Pang! The fatty clasped his two big hands together, clamping Yang Qian's sword. Phew! Yang Qian powered the Tao Sacred Technique to an extreme. The fatty may be able to block Yang Qian's sword, but with the pure Yang flames flaring, he could not block the burning flames. The flames engulfed his body. The fatty's body was covered in flames. Even his hair began to burn. However, the fatty began roaring with laughter within the fire. So this is your strength. It feels like a fire during winter. It's pretty warm. Ha ha ha. Fatty's laughter resounded through the arena. It was like a demonic curse when it entered Yang Qian's ears. How is this possible? He does not feel a thing with the pure Yang flames engulfing his body? What sort of divine wilderness mystic technique was this? He could both block the mutated golden-eyed tiger's sharp claws with his bare hands and laugh even while his body was engulfed in flames? Yang Qian felt true fear. He felt that his opponent's strength had gone far beyond his imagination. And he did not even know what his opponent was relying on. Logic told him that it was impossible to have such a strong body, but it was happening right in front of his eyes. Without understanding what mystic technique this fatty was relying on, Yang Qian knew that he was bound to lose. His strongest attack now couldn't even hurt the fatty, while his opponent had not even used a weapon. Yang Qian panicked. He used strength in both his hands and pulled his sword out from the fatty's hands. But fatty seemed to be invulnerable. His palms did not shed a single drop of blood. Tao Sacred Technique, Radiant Sun Sword. Yang Qian's sword swept up the flames, forming a golden radiant sun swirl as his sword stabbed straight at the fatty's heart. But the fatty only laughed. He did not dodge but instead sent a palm towards Yang Qian. Cha! The sword pierced through the fatty's body, but at the same time, the palm had slammed onto Yang Qian's chest. Pwah! Yang Qian felt a huge tremor in his chest as he flew backwards. In the air, he spit out a mouthful of blood. On the other hand, the fatty's body had been pierced through, however it was like as if nothing had happened. He grinned, showing the blood in his mouth. The fatty could still laugh with a sword stabbed through his body. The scene was extremely weird. His body shook a bit before he grabbed the sword with one hand. Bit by bit, he pulled out the burning hot sword. Good attack, too bad, it's useless against me. The fatty wiped the blood off his lips. It was as if Yang Qian's sword had never stabbed at him. Seeing this scene, Yang Qian, who had always been extremely proud, nearly collapsed. How could there be such an opponent? Did he have an undying body? Could the divine wilderness mystic technique be an undying body? How could an opponent with an undying body be defeated? Yang Qian had never felt so powerless before. What's the matter? The match has begun a long time ago. What are they doing? In the arena, people were watching the battle situation on the divine wilderness stage, but were confused. After the referee declared the beginning of the match, Yang Qian and the fatty stood motionless about 30 feet apart. The only change was a mystic mark that had appeared between the fatty's eyebrows. The mystic mark sparkled and gave off an ancient mystic aura. Why are they just standing? Why aren't they fighting? Some of the Tai A Divine City warriors asked. They were looking forward to an intense battle, but they were left scratching their heads with the actual situation. But in the stands where the Tai A Divine City's instructors and administrators sat, many of the Tai A Divine Kingdom human lords had solemn expressions. The battle has long since begun, a Tai A Divine City instructor said. His voice sounded worried. That fatty's move is an illusion technique. The situation is not good. Yang Qian is lost in the illusion technique. Illusion technique? Many of the Tai A Divine City warriors were shocked hearing this. Attacking with illusion techniques? There was such a move? Some people suddenly recalled the mark between fatty's eyebrows. Could the shimmering ancient mystic mark be the source of the illusion technique? As they looked at Yang Qian again, his face was covered in sweat. The hand that was holding his sword was trembling slightly. It seemed like his mental condition was extremely unstable. This is bad. Although they did not know the actual situation an illusion technique duel entailed, just from Yang Qian's condition, they knew that he could not hold on much longer. Within the world of the illusion technique, the fatty was the absolute master. Once his opponents entered the illusion, they would fall under his control. Whatever the fatty thought up in his mind, it would happen in the illusion. As such, in the illusion, the fatty was in an unassailable position. The Qianshui family clan really has matchless illusion techniques. In the elder stands, a white-robed elder, who had the bearing of an immortal, stroked his beard and laughed happily. Of course. It is a pity the Qianshui family clan is so limited in numbers. In this generation, they do not have many people left. Some divine wilderness mystic tribes have problems with reproduction due to their blood heritage. Another white-robed elder added on. These two white-robed elders were the ones who had disparaged Yi Yun previously, and also the two that had bickered with Song Yan. As they spoke, the two of them glanced at Song Yan with smiles on their faces. Song Yan had just given Yi Yun a token, allowing him to enter the sword tomb. He had just returned and had been targeted by the two white-robed old men. The white-robed old men purposely reminded Song Yan, the greatest advantage of illusion techniques is that it ignores the opponent's movement techniques, attack moves, cultivation techniques and laws. As long as the opponent's mental strength and Yuan Qi is lacking, then just entering the illusion would render any move meaningless. Song Yan understood the thoughts behind the two. They were hinting that Yi Yun's cultivation level was limited, and it would be difficult for him to stay clear-minded in the illusion. Song Yan grunted and could not be bothered to reply. He grabbed a handful of spirit abutilon seeds. As he was munching on it, he was also beginning to worry. If Yao Dao could not defeat this fatty, then what would be the outcome when Yi Yun were to duel this fatty in 2 days? As Song Yan was thinking, something happened on the divine wilderness stage. Yang Qian's body suddenly quivered as his nostrils and ears bled. His face was pale and his eyes listless. It seemed like his fighting spirit had been destroyed inside the illusion. The fatty chuckled as he leapt forward. Like a violet bear, He rushed right in front of Yang Qian and sent a forceful punch right into Yang Qian's chest. Pang! With an explosive sound, Yang Qian's sternum fractured. His body flew out, slamming heavily into the purple tungsten wall, immediately fainting. Yang Qian could not withstand the double attack against his soul and body. Ha ha! The fatty began laughing loudly. It was so easy. With his illusion, the yellow-clothed fatty only used one move, other than the illusion technique, from beginning to end. Immediately, the Yunlong Divine Kingdom warriors in the audience erupted with cheers. The fatty closed his eyes as he stretched out his arms to enjoy the cheers and shouting. This was his stage. This was his glory. The fatty was intoxicated by the cheers the crowd gave him. Chapter 325, The Memories of the Broken Sword. Below the Divine Wilderness stage, Yang Qian slowly regained consciousness under the care of a few medical personnel. He was still coughing incessantly as he weakly said, "Sorry." The proud Yang Qian felt ashamed at this moment. The gap in strength between him and the fatty in yellow was too great. Being unguarded against illusions, he had fallen into the fatty's illusion, causing him to lose terribly. Beside Yang Qian stood a young man, Yao Dao. Yao Dao was silent. As he looked at the fatty on stage who was enjoying the cheers of the crowd, his gaze turned grim. The fatty was older than him, and his cultivation level was higher than his. Fighting him was very tricky. Yao Dao was full of confidence regarding his saber techniques, but Yao Dao had never undergone training to combat in an illusionary world. This fatty was the first illusion warrior Yao Dao had ever met. Fighting in an illusion was completely different from actual fighting. Without experience, he was bound to suffer. Now, Yao Dao felt like he had just mastered his saber techniques and had challenged an expert without having any combat experience. Everything had to be discovered on his own. Yao Dao, just do your best. Yao Dao's instructor, who was standing beside him, pat him on the shoulders. Yao Dao nodded. Before the competition, he had never expected his opponent to turn out this way. He had originally looked forward to a stormy duel, but things did not go according to his wishes. Yao Dao carried his saber up onto the Divine Wilderness stage. The fatty who was across him revealed a playful smile, yet another one. Interesting. Cut the crap. Let's fight. The moment he finished saying that, Yao Dao circulated his Yuan Qi and began focusing his mind, in preparation to withstand the fatty's illusion attack. The fatty laughed as he slowly took out a gourd from his interspatial ring. The gourd was small and about a foot tall. It was dark gold in color. Oh! Yao Dao focused his mind as his right hand gripped his saber's hilt tightly. The fatty did not take out a gourd when he was fighting Yang Qian. Or could this scene of the fatty taking out the gourd be an illusion? At that moment, Yao Dao hesitated attacking the fatty. He was afraid that he would fall into the illusion the moment he moved and end up in a pointless battle with the fatty inside of the illusionary world. If that happened, he was bound to lose. But he could not just stand there watching. It was equivalent to letting the fatty use his mystic techniques. Yao Dao had a hunch that whatever was within the gourd was extremely dangerous. If he allowed the fatty to use it, only grim possibilities awaited him. Upon thinking of this, Yao Dao suddenly bit the tip of his tongue. By biting his tongue, the pain would allow him to wake up. How can I be so timid? The battle has not even begun and I have lost my fighting spirit. How can I hesitate attacking my enemy just because I'm afraid of the illusion? All these thoughts appeared in Yao Dao's mind. He was suddenly enlightened. As a saber user, one had to foremost press forward with indomitable will. He calmed his mind and his saber chi exploded to slice through all that was unreal. Die! Yao Dao charged forward, and with his narrow saber in hand, he slashed at the fatty. And at this moment, the fatty pulled out the gourd's stopper. Rainbow-colored smoke emitted from the gourd like a thin veil. Using the 7 illusion wolf smoke against you is because I, the Fat Lord, thinks highly of you. You should be proud to lose in the 7 illusion wolf smoke. The 7 illusion wolf smoke instantly thickened, covering everyone's vision. It formed a barrier on the stage. Everything inside could no longer be seen. In the stands, the audience were staring widely with their eyes open, afraid to miss a single scene. However, they could not see a thing. The Taya Divine City warriors were extremely nervous. They were worried for Yao Dao, and did not know what the outcome would be. Yao Dao was the only person left in the Taya Divine City's young adult division. The moment he lost, their Taya Divine City young adult division would suffer a terrible failure. In the sword tomb, Yi Yun was sitting cross-legged. On his lap was a broken sword covered in patches of rust. This sword was the one Yi Yun had taken out from the Pure Yang Sword Palace. Yi Yun had tried to learn the way of the sword for nearly a year. He had come up with numerous scenarios and simulations in his mind regarding the huge sword scar left in the Pure Yang Sword Palace, but up to this day, he still had a vague feeling whenever he recalled the sword scar. It was as if there was something hiding the sword scar when he tried to recall it, preventing him from identifying it. Today, Yi Yun was still maintaining his cross-legged posture. Subconsciously, he had entered a state of forgetting everything else. It seemed like there was a heavy mist in his mind. Yi Yun tried hard to see through it, and when the mist slowly dissipated, he saw blurry figures. Oh! This is... Yi Yun's mind lit up. He had never seen this scene before. Amongst the figures was a man holding a sword. He was brandishing his sword without thought, and every sword beam that slashed out had the power to destroy celestial bodies and cut open the heavens. The scene was in complete chaos. At times it was clear, but at other times, it was blurry. Yi Yun could not see the opponent of the sword-wielding man. He only felt that the chaotic battle was earth-shattering. At this moment, a giant appeared high in the sky. This giant was as if he was casted out of bronze. His body was like a vast mountain, emitting a suffocating aura. It was as if he was a divine spirit that came from the 9 heavens, a controller of the heaven and earth, a proud being over all existence. He held in his hand a humongous bronze halberd. Just brandishing the halberd caused the world to fracture. This shocking crack spread through the ground, all the way to the oceans and sky. The oceans ripped apart as the seawater formed numerous huge whirlpools. Everything that entered the crack disappeared till the oceans was completely dried up. Following that, the sky tore apart. Eventually, a complete world had been ripped apart by the giant. A halberd attack that could split an entire world. Yi Yun was greatly shocked. What sort of existence was this giant? He did not have time to think carefully as light began to distort. In the blurriness, he saw the sword-wielding man turn into a beam of light as he flew towards the bronze giant. At that moment, the man and his sword had combined into one. The sword beam flashed past and the man stabbed the bronze giant's neck, almost to the point of cutting off the bronze giant's head. Yi Yun's pupils constricted. This attack was too terrifying. The giant's strength was able to split a world apart with his halberd. Now, his head had nearly been chopped off by the man's sword? Next, Yi Yun seemed to hear a ping sound. The man's sword had broken because of the enormous impact. The man was left with half a broken sword in his hand. Because it had been stained by the bronze giant's blood, it was slowly being corroded, emitting trails of green smoke. The divine sword was originally covered in flowing light, but now the light rapidly disappeared. The sword seemed to have a life of its own as it issued out painful cries. The bronze giant, whose head had nearly been chopped off, also let out a painful roar. He swiped his halberd towards the sword-wielding man. The halberd flooded Yi Yun's vision. He could only vaguely see the sword-wielding man being hit by the halberd and his body flying out. His body even flew out of this world. And this world also shattered with the bronze giant's second attack. An entire corner of a world peeled off and left the world's main body as it drifted into the endless universe. Following that, this corner of the world experienced a long and aimless drifting through the universe. And that broken sword was left in that world. It had already completely lost its spiritual essence. As it was corroded by the bronze giant's blood, its surface began to rust. Rust kept building up, and soon, this broken sword was covered in rust, and looked no different from a piece of junk metal. From the beginning to the end, Yi Yun was like a spectator of this world. He had silently witnessed everything. He saw the river of time flow as he saw seas change into mulberry fields. Yi Yun did not know how long he spent in his vision. He seemed to experience numerous lifetimes that lacked any emotion, and only after leading a long and callous life did he somehow suddenly awaken. The awoken Yi Yun was covered in cold sweat. The dreary life he experienced refreshed his memory. He felt like he had turned into a lifeless stone residing in that world, which did nothing but be a witness. Yi Yun looked towards a wall corner. The oil lamps were still silently burning in the chamber. From the amount of oil that was consumed, he estimated that he had only spent about an hour throughout that experience. But in the dream, Yi Yun felt like he had experienced thousands of years. Yi Yun lowered his head as he pondered. He looked towards his knees, and there laid the broken sword motionless on his lap. The patches of rust covered the entire blade. Vaguely, Yi Yun could see a few brown spots on the broken sword. Around the spots, there was clearly more rust. Were these spots left behind by the bronze giant's dried-up blood? The scenes in his vision seemed to be the origins of the broken sword. And the corner of the world that the bronze giant ripped off with his large halberd must have been the world that had drifted amongst the stars for a long period of time before crashing into this world. It was the so-called meteorite that fell into Fallen Stargate? Normal warriors believed that a meteorite had crashed into Fallen Stargate, while there were reclusive family clans that thought that it was a mystic cave. But no matter what they believed, it was not right. It was a corner of a world that a bronze giant had cut off. Yi Yun's mind became clearer. He finally understood that the vision he previously saw was the memories of the sword. A sword could also have memories? Yi Yun lifted up the broken sword from his lap as he examined it from all angles. No matter how he examined it, the sword was like a piece of scrap metal. It was unbelievable that before it lost its spiritual essence, it was the sword of a peerless expert that could kill gods. Could the sword-wielding man be the Pure Yang Sword Palace's owner? Many thoughts flashed past Yi Yun's mind. It was hard to believe what sort of martial arts realm the Pure Yang Sword Palace owner and that bronze giant had reached. After being hit by the bronze giant's blow, did the Pure Yang Sword Palace owner die? That terrible blow could ever shatter a world, and with the tens of millions of years, the odds of him still being alive were low. If he was still alive, how could he ignore the Pure Yang Sword Palace? It was such a pity for this peerless expert. Chapter 326, Overall Group Match begins. With the broken sword in hand, Yi Yun injected his spiritual energy into the sword as he stood up to obtain the memories from the sword. He began brandishing the sword slowly, as if he was immersed in that dreamlike spiritual world. The sword-wielding man's attack that cut the bronze giant's neck was naturally much clearer than the sword scars left in the Pure Yang Sword Palace. Yi Yun just needed to recall it as it was now a clear memory in his mind. Looking at a sword scar to learn an attack was naturally limited. But having seen the attack personally, and having the scenes of the sword attack imprinted into his mind, it was completely different. Yi Yun slowly entered that mysterious state again. He wandered around the dreamlike world and he could faintly feel that the things he had previously not understood become clearer. So that was how it was. Yi Yun muttered to himself. He did not know how much time had passed when suddenly, he heard footsteps coming from outside the sword tomb. The sound of the footsteps were very soft, but they had a rhythm to it. The interval between each step was like clockwork precision. It was the footsteps of an expert. San Yen. Yi Yun knew who the owner of the footsteps was immediately. Yi Yun was surprised that he could hear the footsteps from inside the sword tomb. It was fascinating. This was because the Sword Tomb's door isolated the Sword Tomb from the exterior world once it was closed. And not only could he hear the footsteps, he was even able to identify the owner of those footsteps. This kid still hasn't come out yet. Outside the Sword Tomb, Song Yan began talking to himself in an annoyed manner. There were only 2 hours left till the beginning of the overall group match. Every time Yi Yun entered the Sword Tomb, he will lose track of time, requiring Song Yan to remind him. But Song Yan was afraid of disturbing Yi Yun. Warriors were most afraid of being disturbed when they were cultivating. Just as Song Yan was looking at the hourglass, the Sword Tomb's door suddenly opened. Yi Yun appeared by the door. The overall group matches are beginning? Yi Yun was able to hear the words Song Yan was saying to himself from inside the Sword Tomb. Song Yan was stumped for a while before saying snappily, "You sure are on time, you seem to be in the right place to catch that. Almost everyone is at the arena now. There are still 2 hours left. You can still meditate and rest for a while to adjust your condition. Your opponent today is very strong, extremely strong." Song Yan used 2 consecutive strong words to describe the Yunlong Divine Kingdom's overall group match opponent. "This old man doesn't expect you to become the champion, and I only want you to fight to show our Taiwa Divine Kingdom's forceful stance, lest those sons of Cheese continue being so complacent in front of me." Song Yan looked pissed. He was in a bad mood after those 2 white-robed elders nipped at him. "I got it." Yi Yun responded tersely as if his mind was still wandering. He was still immersed in gaining insight of the sword intent, so he could not help it. Seeing Yi Yun not taking it at heart, Song Yan turned despondent. "Kid, what are you thinking? The entire Taiwa Divine City's hopes for the overall group match are resting on your shoulders. Kid, let me tell you. The Yunlong Divine Kingdom's young adult group has several people who are very strong. If you can just beat any one of those strong ones, or win 5 consecutive matches, I will get the city lord to give you a saber." Song Yan felt that Yi Yun was like a rabbit who did not worry until it saw an eagle coming, so he decided to bait him with some attractive prizes. "Saber?" Yi Yun was slightly stunned. Song Yan smiled mysteriously. "Don't be deceived by the city lord's scholarly appearance. He actually uses a saber. And the city lord loves to collect all sorts of treasured sabers. His personal arsenal is filled with great sabers. If you can win 5 consecutive matches, you can pick any saber." The city lord's collection? Yi Yun was tempted. The sonic deathblade he was currently using was taken from the Taiwa Divine City's armory. Although it was a good saber, it was much worse compared to those the city lord collected. He already had the mysterious broken sword, and as for his saber, it was indeed normal. If he had a good saber to help him in his battles, his combat powers would go another step further. But, actually, the broken sword was not something that could see the light of day. Yi Yun did not dare use it easily as it was one of his absolute trump cards. Therefore, he was lacking a sword as well. Upon thinking of this, Yi Yun glanced at Song Yan and grinned. "About that, Senior Song Yan, why not give me a sword too? Elder Jian Ge likes collecting swords, right?" Upon hearing Yi Yun's words, Song Yan's beard went diagonal with a quirk of his lips. "Kid, you sure take a yard when given an inch. You aren't even at the Yuan Foundation realm and you want to keep 2 sage-level weapons. Aren't you afraid people will eye them? With your current strength, you can't even use the power of a sage-level weapon." Song Yan said unhappily. But upon saying that, he changed his mind and said, "If you win, so what if I want to give you a good sword? Don't even talk about that old kid, Jin Ji's collection. Even if you want the sword in Jin Ji's hands, I'll grab it for you." The Taiwa Divine Kingdom's honor was on the line for this battle. Although sage-level sabers and swords were precious, rewarding Yi Yun with them was not a big deal. But Song Yan knew that it was not easy for Yi Yun to beat any of those strong experts, or to win 5 consecutive matches. If Yi Yun did well, the opponent will realize his outstanding strength and send an expert to end Yi Yun's winning streak. With Song Yan's guarantee, Yi Yun smiled. then this junior thanks senior Song Yin. Seeing Yun smiling, Song Yin rolled his eyes. This kid even thanked him. Did he really think that sword and saber were already his? Yun followed Song Yin to the arena. The overall group matches were about to begin. Yun arrived at the participant benches. Chu Xiaoran was also there. For the Tai A Divine City overall group matches, only Yun and Chu Xiaoran had the participating qualifications. But not much could be expected of Chu Xiaoran's strength. Basically, only Yun could fight. Glancing at his opponents, there were 15 people from the Yunlong Divine Kingdom. Other than the weakest young adult team having lost and being eliminated previously, every person from the other groups were present from the Yunlong Divine Kingdom. They still had their full lineup after the young adult group match? Yun was surprised and he asked Chu Xiaoran, who was beside him, "Xiaoran, wasn't there a young adult match before the overall group match? Our Taiya Divine Cities Xiao Dao and Yang Xian had fought. Both of them are very strong, but they could not defeat a single person from the Yunlong Divine Kingdom?" Upon hearing Yun's question, Chu Xiaoran smiled bitterly. The person they fought against was that fatty in yellow. He is proficient in using illusions. Yang Xian did not understand the situation and got hit with Fatty's illusions, resulting in his immediate defeat. As for Yao Dao, he was in a better condition. He used his saber intent to break through the Fatty's illusions and slashed at the Fatty thrice. Although the Fatty had managed to dodge the slashes, preventing damage to any of his vital parts, he was still quite injured. But the Fatty is older than Yao Dao, and his cultivation level is higher. He used a Gord's weird smoke, called 7 Illusion Wolf Smoke. The wolf smoke was very weird, it could form into an illusion barrier. Within the 7 Illusion Wolf Smoke array, Yao Dao was unable to keep his mind absolutely clear, so he was eventually defeated by the Fatty. Illusion? Yun thought for a while. He never expected that humans could use illusions as an attack. It was not much different from the Heaven Purple Yang Ginseng's powers. Back when Yun first met the Heaven Purple Yang Ginseng, he had been hit by the herb's illusion and nearly fell off a cliff. Yao Dao was a very strong saber user. Although he was inferior to Qin Haotian, Li Xiao and company, he could not be defeated so easily. A person like Yao Dao, who faithfully trained the way of the saber, would have very strong martial arts conviction. But even so, he still succumbed to the Fatty's illusion. From this, it was indeed true that the Fatty was outstanding. Yun subconsciously looked towards the Yunlong Divine Kingdom's small groups and met the Fatty's gaze. The Fatty was leaning on a chair with his hands supporting his chin. He was looking at Yun with great interest. That gaze looked like a hunter having seen his prey. Really interesting. The Fatty began to laugh. Yesterday, he had met the one-armed man once again. This time, the one-armed man had offered a greater reward to get the Fatty to maim Yun. The Fatty was proficient in illusions, which was a spiritual mental attack. The souls of humans are very fragile, so once they get injured, they are very difficult to treat. So whenever spiritual mental attacks were involved, it could easily hurt others, but it was also easy to have the attack reverse back at the caster. In the illusionary world, it was not difficult to cause permanent damage to the other party's soul. The Fatty did not care who the one-armed man was, but he was swayed by the high price the one-armed man offered. Hence, he did not mind doing so. After all, the Yunlong Divine Kingdom was a rival faction of the Taiya Divine Kingdom. That Fatty is targeting me. Yun frowned slightly. At this moment, the Fatty's Yuan Qi voice transmission came into Yun's ears. This fat lord will be the first one fighting. Have you gotten any information about this fat lord from the babe beside you? I recommend you to gather as much intelligence as possible, if not, in the match, you might just die without knowing why. Hearing the Fatty's words, Yun hesitated for a while before scrunching of his eyebrows. He gave of a helpless looks. This Fatty sure felt good about himself. I've asked. I heard you use illusion, I'm actually quite afraid. Oh? The fatty frowned as he sat up straight. He stared at Yi Yun from a distance more than 100 feet away. He stared at Yi Yun for more than the time it takes for 10 breaths before suddenly laughing. Newborn calves sure aren't afraid of tigers. Who gave you this courage? The fatty's cultivation level was at the peak of the mid-stages of the Yuan Foundation realm, and he was just a bit short of entering the late stages of the Yuan Foundation realm. During the match, the fatty had to suppress his cultivation level to the early stages of the Yuan Foundation realm due to the age difference, but his illusions did not need to be suppressed. There was not much difference using illusions at the early stages of the Yuan Foundation realm. This was also the source of the fatty's confidence. He was not good at actual fighting, but he could prevent enemies, who were good at actual fighting, from showcasing their strength. This was the fatty's ability. Yi Yun could not be bothered with the fatty as he began meditating. As he digested the insights gained from the Sword Tomb, he adjusted his breathing, pushing his condition to its peak before the match began. At this moment, the Taiya Divine City referee had walked up the Divine Wilderness stage. The overall group matches had officially began. Chapter 327, Yi Yun vs Qian Shui. Today is the overall group competition and it is also the last competition. The group champion will win 10 seats. Taiya Divine City's fighters, Yi Yun, Zhu Xiaoran. Yunlong Divine Kingdom's fighters, Bai Fenglin. On the Divine Wilderness stage, the referee announced each and every name of the Yunlong Divine Kingdom's warriors. There was a total of 15 names and the Yunlong Divine Kingdom crowd would loudly cheer as every name was read out. As that happened, the Taiya Divine City's warriors became even more solemn with every readout name. There were just too many people left standing on the Yunlong Divine Kingdom's side for the competition. After the referee finished announcing the names, he carried on. Next, may the Yunlong Divine Kingdom and the Taiya Divine Kingdom's warriors come up on stage. After the referee said that, the fatty dressed in yellow jumped up on stage from the Yunlong Divine Kingdom's side. He was holding the dark gold gourd in his hand. As he raised the gourd high up, he loudly screamed. His presence was domineering. The Yunlong Divine Kingdom audience was riled up as they started shouting back, Qian Shui! Qian Shui! The fatty stretched out his arms and closed both his eyes. He was enjoying the cheers and screams of the audience. As a member of the Qian Shui family clan, he enjoyed the infinite glory he got from allowing his surname to reverberate within the Taiya Divine City's arena. The cheers lasted for a long time. When they ended, the fatty lowered his head slightly and looked at Yi Yun with a provocative smile. Yi Yun, I will go up first. Zhu Xiaoran said to Yi Yun. She knew that it was impossible for her to win against Fatty, but at least she could share some of Yi Yun's burden. By scouting the battle ahead, she could allow for Yi Yun to gain a better understanding of the fatty's fighting techniques. There is no need. I alone will be enough for this overall group competition. Yi Yun's words stunned Zhu Xiaoran. Yi Yun, you want to fight against all of them alone? Yi Yun said, actually. Not all of them will fight. Except for a few people, the rest are just there to make the numbers and can simply be ignored. Eh? Zhu Xiaoran was speechless. At this moment, Yi Yun had already walked up on the Divine Wilderness stage. Yi Yun! Yi Yun! In the arena, there were also people from Taiya Divine City shouting for Yi Yun. Although this was the overall group competition and the hopes of the Taiya Divine City winning were slim, they could not lose their stance, even if they lost the match. Having more people, the Taiya Divine City's cries managed to drown the Yunlong Divine Kingdom's cheers. It's useless to shout with that much strength. Although Yi Yun is not bad, his abilities will be suppressed by Qian Shui and he will not be able to use them at all, a Yunlong Divine Kingdom elder said unhappily upon seeing the Taiya Divine City's cheers drown out the Yunlong Divine Kingdom's cheers. Yi Yun's strength came from his Taiya sacred technique and his saber Dao. However, fighting against Qian Shui, what mattered most was the depth of one's Yuan Qi and the strength of one's spiritual mind. There were only two ways in which Yi Yun could turn the tables. Either Yi Yun's cultivation level had to be higher than Qian Shui, so that he could use his thick Yuan Qi to withstand the illusion technique, or he had to have strong spiritual mental powers so that he would not be affected by the illusion technique. And for these two conditions, the former was not even up for consideration as Yi Yun was still not at the Yuan Foundation realm. The depth of his Yuan Qi was inferior to Qian Shui's. As for spiritual mental powers, Qian Shui had cultivated the Qian Shui clan's mystic technique, which was a mystic technique that focused on training one's spiritual mental powers. So, his spiritual mental powers were much stronger than his peers, even more so when compared to a younger Yi Yun. Why would Yi Yun, a saber user, specifically train his spiritual mental powers? Yi Yun's saber techniques and cultivation techniques had no effects in an illusion technique battle. This was the reason why Qian Shui was so confident in himself. No matter how peerless your saber techniques were, so what if you could conjure a Tang Valley phantom image for your Taya sacred technique? Once you get lost in the illusion, none of those abilities could be used effectively. Although Qian Shui was confident, he did not underestimate Yi Yun. He took out the golden gourd from the beginning and planned to use the 7 illusion wolf smoke. Yi Yun, you are sure to lose. When the referee announced the beginning of the match, the fatty immediately opened up a distance and pulled out the stopper of the golden gourd. Right after, the 7 illusion wolf smoke emanated out from it. It was like a colorful cloud. The illusion only needed an instance to activate. It was impossible to use the short time gap to attack the fatty. Yi Yun, preserve your mind. Do not fall under the influence of the illusion. Attack with your saber and finish off the fatty. He is not good at actual fighting, so if you were to inject the strongest combat power of the Taya sacred technique into your attack, just one attack alone will secure your victory. Song Yan's Yuan Qi transmission rang in Yi Yun's ear. The old man's voice sounded anxious. Got it. Yi Yun responded tersely. He closed his eyes as his body was slowly covered by the 7 illusion wolf smoke. If you think closing your eyes is of any use, then you are too naive. The fatty grinned. Between his eyebrows was a glimmering ancient mystic mark. This was the Qian Shui clan's symbol and was also the source of the illusion. Under the shimmering of the mysterious mark, the 7 illusion wolf smoke completed the forming of its barrier. The divine wilderness stage was completely blocked off as the fatty pushed his illusion to the extreme. At this moment, Yi Yun still remained motionless. The fatty did not lie. One could not withstand the Qian Shui clan's illusions even with their eyes closed. Yi Yun saw that he had arrived in the desolate wilderness. This place looked familiar and resembled Meteorite Abyss when Yi Yun was out training in the divine wilderness. And right in front of Yi Yun was a huge mutated 3-eyed spider. This mutated 3-eyed spider was staring at Yi Yun with its 3 red eyes. Its mouth constantly dripped with saliva while its 2 fangs reflected a cold beam. Mutated 3-eyed spider, this is a desolate beast I have seen before. It is also a terrifying monster that I could not defeat back then. The Qian Shui clan's illusions can dig up my memories of terrifying existences. Yi Yun's spiritual mental powers and Yuan Qi were indeed weaker than the fatty's, so he was not able to shake off the influence caused by the illusion. However, Yi Yun's mind was clear, and he would not succumb to the illusion. Actually, the fatty's illusion technique had not yet reached the ultimate realm. If so, he could easily cause his opponent to be lost in the illusion, and kills in the illusion would be reflected in reality. However, even so, the fatty's illusion technique was still very deadly. It was equivalent to cutting off the 5 senses of a warrior. Even if you knew that you were in an illusion, even if you knew everything in front of you was fake, you would not be able to do anything about it. You would see the things in the illusion coming forth to kill you. At that moment, no matter how you resisted, you would not be able to break out of the illusion. As for the fatty who was outside the illusion, he could attack at any time, killing you in one strike. At this moment, Yi Yun was standing silently in the illusionary world. No matter how much the mutated 3-eyed spider growled, he remained motionless. Yi Yun had opened his purple crystal energy vision before the fatty activated his illusion. In the energy vision, all sorts of illusions lost their meaning. Yi Yun was able to directly see the origin of the energy flows within this world. He clearly saw, in his energy vision, that the fatty was huddled in one corner. His energy was not strong and was weaker than Jun Yu's. Yi Yun even saw thread-like energies flowing from the fatty's body. It was likely that these energies were responsible for conjuring up the illusions. The Qianshui clan's illusion technique is different from the Heaven Purple Yang Ginseng's illusions, but they still have the same effect. Many thoughts flashed past Yi Yun's mind. Back when he captured the primordial herb, the Heaven Purple Yang Ginseng, he had used the purple crystal to see through its illusions, enabling him to lock onto its position. As for the fatty's illusion technique, it was actually slightly worse than the primordial herbs. It was completely ineffective against Yi Yun. Yi Yun stood there without a single motion, his right hand silently pressing over his interspatial ring. Next, he allowed the fake mutated three-eyed spider to attack at him. Phew! The mutated three-eyed spider passed right through his body and disappeared like the wind. Seeing Yi Yun's reaction, the fatty laughed. I was pondering over the reason why you were so arrogant. So it is because you think that my illusions will be useless against you if you closed your eyes and remained motionless by not attacking or defending, letting the illusions attack you. It's ridiculously funny. The attacks within the illusion are indeed fake, but some attacks are real. The fatty laughed out loudly as he took out an axe from his interspatial ring. He was not afraid to let Yi Yun hear his words as Yi Yun's five senses were being controlled by the illusion technique. Yi Yun was unable to hear a single thing. The fatty played with his soul-cutting axe as he slowly walked towards Yi Yun. The axe was very short and there was an extremely hideous, ghastly face drawn on the handle. By falling into my illusion, you will lose your body's ability to resist. Let me use my soul-cutting axe to send you on your way. The fatty laughed. The axe could be injected with spiritual mental energy. Although he was not good at actual fighting, he could imbue a spiritual attack into his physical attack. One attack could severely injure his opponent's spiritual soul, making his opponent turn into a retard. He purposely measured Yi Yun's neck and head with the axe, as if he was choosing his angle of attack. Attacking Yi Yun now was no different than attacking a motionless straw target. Seeing the fatty gain complete control over the situation to the point of freely choosing the angle of his attack, the Yunlong Divine Kingdom warriors offstage turned excited. Qianshui! Qianshui! They shouted loudly as their emotions amplified in excitement. Qianshui! Chop off the kid's head! Qianshui! Cut him to pieces! Many of the Yunlong Divine Kingdom warriors were standing up due to their excitement. They were waving their arms. Some even drew their weapons and gestured motions that resembled the act of cutting off Yi Yun's head. With the soul-cutting axe in hand, the fatty raised both his hands to enjoy the cheers. Following that, his eyes immediately turned cold as intense killing intent appeared in his gaze towards Yi Yun. Kid, don't blame this fat lord. The fatty grinned as he leaped up to charge at Yi Yun. His fat body began moving and he looked like a bouncing ball. His speed was not very fast, but there was no need for speed as his opponent could not dodge. The fatty rushed right in front of Yi Yun and he injected spiritual mental energy into the soul-cutting axe, making it emit a black light. The ghastly face on the handle began to emit wailing sounds that were like a ghost crying. At this moment, the referee in charge of this match turned nervous. He was, after all, a Taiya Divine City law enforcer, so he was worried that the fatty would heavily injure Yi Yun on purpose. He was prepared to make a move at any time to save Yi Yun. This was instructed to him by Tsang Yan as Tsang Yan had to guard against the fatty's strange illusion techniques. However, just as the referee was about to make his move, he was stunned. In his extreme focused spiritual perception, he suddenly noticed that Yi Yun's body was circulating immense amounts of Yuan Qi. It was as if a calm pool of spring water had suddenly transformed into a violent vortex. At that instant, the soul-cutting axe's black light seemed to stall. The originally motionless Yi-Yun, reflected in the fatty's eyes, suddenly opened both his eyes. Yi-Yun's gaze contained a hint of sneer and sinister playfulness. What? The fatty's grin immediately froze. He was like a mortal who was sneaking up on a tiger and, when he raised his metal fork, the tiger suddenly woke up. Yi-Yun's right hand, which had been constantly pressing on his interspatial ring, suddenly sprang up and in his hand appeared a cold metallic brick. Everything happened in a split second. Yi-Yun suddenly took a step forward and with his Yuan Qi exploding, the pure Yang Qi from the Taiya sacred technique was injected into the brick. The pure Yang flames burned as the brick came crashing down at the fatty's head. The fatty momentarily went into a daze. Although he was not good at actually fighting, as long as he was mentally prepared, he could dodge, but Yi-Yun's sudden attack had exceeded all his expectations and understandings. This resulted in Yi-Yun's attack completing about half its trajectory before the fatty suddenly woke up from his daze to retreat. However, it was already too late. How could the fatty's speed compare with Yi-Yun's? Yi-Yun had quickly caught up and, like a maggot that could not be shaken, the brick hit the fatty's oily forehead. Pang! A thud boomed out and people heard the unmistakable crack of a skull fracture. The fatty's body bounced off as if it was a ball that had impacted a wall. He then flew out tens of meters before heavily crashing into a purple tungsten wall. Boom! Like the sound of a dead pig crashing down from a high height, the fatty's body was like a large pancake that slapped onto the wall. After a few seconds, his body slowly slid down to the ground. Left behind on the purple tungsten wall were gruesome bloodstains. The fatty's face was covered in blood with his eyes staring wide open. His expression was that of seeing a ghost. Yi-Yun's attack had been too sudden. The final explosive attack at the last moment was fast, accurate, ruthless. It did not give the fatty any chance of dodging. Around the Divine Wilderness stage, the Yunlong Divine Kingdom audience were like roosters who had their necks squeezed. The cheering stopped as the cacophony of voices turned into complete silence that resembled that of a graveyard. All of this happened in a second. They were still maintaining their standing positions with their arms high up in the air. Their expressions were that of excitement as if they were waiting to see the mayhem that was to occur. All of that had been frozen on their faces. However, the mayhem that happened did not befall on Yi-Yun, but instead it befell the unlucky fatty. A group of people seemed to turn into a row of standing zombies. They were silent, stiff, and twisting. The reversal had happened too fast. They had yet to understood what had actually happened. This included the Tai-A Divine City's warriors who were also confounded. They did not understand how Yi-Yun won. Was the fatty's illusion useless against Yi-Yun? Even Yao Dao could not break through the illusions, so how was Yi-Yun able to do so? Author's note: as I'm going out in the afternoon, the release tonight will be very late. Since the plot cannot be split, I wrote 4,000 characters to finish this tiny arc, so everyone doesn't need to wait for the second update. Just wait till tomorrow before reading the next chapter. Chapter 328, Fong Lin. Translator, Sitalan. Editor, Sitalan. Yi-Yun, are you alright? Zhu Xiaoran worriedly asked as Yi-Yun came off the stage, but she quickly realized that her question made no sense. Yi-Yun looked as if he couldn't be any better. In fact, it looked like he never took part in a huge battle. He had casually loosened his muscles, warming up his body before casually defeating the fatty. Thinking back to the battle process, Yi-Yun had won far too easily. From beginning to end, he had only stepped forward once and attacked once. Besides, the weapon he used wasn't even his saber. If one ignored the time it took for the fatty to prepare his 7 illusion wolf smoke and illusion technique to bewitch Yi-Yun, then it took them less than the blink of an eye to exchange blows. This was definitely the fastest Yi-Yun had ever taken care of an opponent. Chu Xiaoran did not really know what to say. This fatty was not some nobody. He was from the Qianshui clan, and this mysterious family clan's mystic technique was dreaded by countless numbers of people. In the Yunlong 72 pagodas, this fatty should be ranked in the top 3. He had defeated Yao Dao and Yang Xian, but against Yi Yun, this fatty had suddenly transformed into a straw sack. If Chu Xiaoran had not seen the match between Yao Dao and the fatty with her own eyes, she would have never have believed that the fatty was a top expert. In the elder stands, Song Yan was stroking his chin, and he was also very alarmed. Could this kid have specially trained his spiritual mental powers? Originally, he did not have any hope in Yi Yun truly defeating the fatty, because he could not conceive how Yi Yun could win. It was only because Yi Yun often surprised him pleasantly that he hoped that there would be a pleasant surprise this time. This was the unconditional trust and anticipation he had in Yi Yun. However, not only did Yi Yun give him a pleasant surprise, it was such a ridiculously pleasant surprise that it made it hard for Song Yan to believe it. Though, now was not time to question Yi Yun in detail. Song Yan stroked his chin as he suddenly recalled something. He turned his head and looked at the Yunlong Divine Kingdom elders with great interest. As expected, Song Yan saw the 2 white-robed Yunlong Divine Kingdom elders look like their dear sons just died. Their expressions were extremely ugly. This made Song Yan overjoyed. His current feelings could be described in one word: awesome. Feng Lin, what are you doing? One of the white-robed Yunlong Divine Kingdom elder was fuming with anger. Especially after seeing Song Yan's sardonic, wretched, and arrogant smile, he was so angry that even his liver ached. Letting go of the fact that Yi Yun won the teenager group competition, now he also flaunted himself in the overall group competition. Many of the elders could not bear it anymore. Elder Baiyu, I do not know what happened either. Qianshui's illusions seem to be ineffective against Yi Yun, said a girl in a palatial attire from the Yunlong Divine Kingdom's participant benches. She was the leader of the Yunlong Divine Kingdom's participants. When they first reached the Tai Divine City, this girl and the fatty in yellow had stood in the airship, looking down at all of the Tai Divine City cultivators. Back then, the fatty was commenting on others while being highly spirited and vigorous. Unexpectedly, when the real battle happened, he was nearly beaten into a retard by a 14-year-old kid with a brick. Feng Lin found it fascinating. Even when she fought the fatty, she had to be extremely careful. She had to use the accumulation of her family heritage's clear-minded curse, the fact that her cultivation level was higher than the fatty's, and the experience that she gained from fighting warriors with illusion techniques to barely beat him. Yi Yun had nothing. How did he win? No matter what the reason is. I absolutely do not wish to see a loss in the next battle. Elder Baiyu said unhappily. Feng Lin took a deep breath and said, Do not worry, Elder Baiyu. While Feng Lin was conversing with Baiyu, the Taiya Divine City warriors in the arena were filled with high emotions. Yi Yun's brick really allowed them to vent their frustration. When they saw the fatty's various forms of arrogance earlier, the Taiya Divine City warriors had to suppress their anger, wishing they could go up and step on his fat face. However, everyone knew that the fatty was very strong. He even defeated Yao Dao. Even Yi Yun would find it difficult, what more them? They never expected to see the fatty jump up and down on the stage, acting smug and all, only to later be bricked down by Yi Yun. What else could be more exhilarating than that? Therefore, the Taiya Divine City warriors now only wished that they could rush up to the Divine Wilderness stage and toss Yi Yun up into the air. In this state of excitement, the Taiya Divine City warriors' cheers went on without any signs of abating for just a bit under 15 minutes. Only when the referee went on stage did they slowly quieten down. Next match, Yunlong Divine Kingdom, who is fighting? The referee did not bother asking Yi Yun, as Yi Yun was already standing in the middle of the Divine Wilderness stage. Seeing Yi Yun's calm expression while standing on the stage, the Yunlong Divine Kingdom warriors did not look too good. This kid must have some method of breaking through illusions. Senior brother Qianshui isn't good at fighting. Furthermore, Yi Yun took him by surprise and made him suffer. He might not have that much of an ability, I'll go up and finish him. A youth dressed in a red shirt said just as he was about to jump up on the Divine Wilderness stage. However, just as he jumped, he was pulled straight back by Feng Lin. Shut up! Feng Lin suddenly boomed. Senior sister, I. The youth in red was left dazed by Feng Lin's berating. Do you think we haven't lost enough face? You really think Yi Yun is weak? Or do you think that you can squash him just because he's young? Do not forget that you need to suppress your cultivation level. Back then, even Junyu lost. Feng Lin's words left the youth in red speechless. His strength was only ranked above average in this group of people, so he naturally did not dare to refute Feng Lin. As the leader, Feng Lin had the right to decide who was to go up on stage. Feng Lin was originally considering letting their 4th or 5th rank person battle Yi Yun as they wouldn't fight too poorly. However, now, with Elder Baiyu's authoritative command, Feng Lin was thinking of going up herself. This match had to finish Yi Yun off. For even if they won after letting Yi Yun go through a series of battles alone, it would be too shameful. Before Feng Lin went on stage, she subconsciously looked at the corner of the participant benches. A pale-faced youth in black sat there. His hair covered his eyes. Even when the fatty was defeated by Yi Yun, he never seemed to have any reaction. Feng Lin took a light breath of air before she walked straight up on stage. I'll fight you. Oh? Yi Yun's heart thumped. In the purple crystal's energy vision, Yi Yun had sensed that this girl in palatial attire had surging energy. This girl's strength is very strong. Yi Yun knew that he had easily defeated the fatty because he used trickery, thanks to the purple crystal. Unfortunately, the fatty's abilities were completely countered by Yi Yun. Furthermore, Yi Yun had purposely given the fatty the false impression of I've fallen into your illusion, you can attack me now, luring him to come closer to him. And in the moment that the fatty thought he had already won, Yi Yun beat him with one strike. This fatty had really been badly cheated by Yi Yun. The battle was won easily, but Yi Yun would not look down on the Yunlong Divine Kingdom warriors because of it. Amongst the Yunlong Divine Kingdom warriors, there were people who were extremely frightening, so much that Yi Yun did not have complete confidence against them. For example, the girl in palatial attire was not an ordinary person. Against this girl, Yi Yun immediately retrieved his Sonic Deathblade. Chapter 329, Jade Maiden 18 Swords. Yi Yun, I never expected that in my trip to the Tai'a Divine City, my first battle would be against you, a 14-year-old child. Feng Lin looked at Yi Yun as she slowly took her palatial gown off. Feng Lin's body was slender and she was an elite of the Yunlong Divine Kingdom. Although she wore a tight combat attire under her palatial gown and wasn't revealing anything provocative, the blood of the hot-blooded teenagers present started pulsating through their veins upon seeing the stripping scene. Some of the Yunlong Divine Kingdom's youths even started cheering loudly, shouting out Feng Lin's name. Feng Lin was very popular in the Yunlong 72 pagodas. She was the object of admiration for many of the male cultivators. Feng Lin was different from Fatty Qianshui as she did not have the slightest reaction to the cheers. She was only looking at Yi Yun. At this moment, Feng Lin had already appeared in her combat attire that clung closely to her body, perfectly showcasing her relatively well-developed, mature figure. She slowly took out a broad and tall, ice-blue metal box from her interspatial ring. There was a slender, foot-long sword hilt on the top of the ice-blue metal box. It was a sword case. The sword case was wider than Feng Lin's waist and it almost looked like a door. It did not match Feng Lin's figure. Yi Yun looked carefully at the weapon, truly an exotic weapon, but, you seem to be older than me by only a few years. Yi Yun found it amusing. This bunch of elites liked to act older than they were. Just because they were a few years older, they would label others as children. However, it was likely that, as the leader of these people, this young girl was used to being a young leader and considered herself mature. My sword is actually not exotic. As Feng Lin said that, she lightly pressed on the sword hilt as if activating a mechanism. With a soft ka sound, the sword case opened and numerous small sword cases popped out of the main sword case as they split into two sides. There were a total of 18 sword cases and they formed into a semicircle, like a peacock's tail. Every sword case had a sword hilt to it. Oh. This is... Yi Yun looked at the ice blue, fan-shaped sword cases. These weapons seemed very gaudy. A single person using 18 swords? Why did the people from the Yunlong Divine Kingdom like to use so many swords? Feng Lin smiled, my swords are different. As she said that, she gently pulled out a sword. This sword case was made of an unknown metal which was ice blue in color, and so was the sword itself. The sword was about 4 feet long and the blade was not more than 3 fingers wide. On the blade, there were blue lines resembling ice cracks, making it extremely beautiful. Feng Lin said, usually when I fight others, using up to my 4th sword will be enough. Today, I have to suppress my cultivation level to the early stage of the Yuan Foundation realm while fighting you. I wonder how many swords I will need? I might even need to use all of them. As Feng Lin said that, her figure moved, and an unbelievable scene occurred. Behind Feng Lin, water vapor started concealing her, causing her figure to turn blurry, as if she was conjuring many phantom images. After that, those phantom images suddenly turned into real bodies as they walked out one by one from behind Feng Lin. These girls were identical to Feng Lin, as if she was part of multiple births. Ha! Yi Yun was shocked. What sort of cultivation technique was this? Cloning technique? A person could suddenly split into so many people? Yi Yun knew that these were not afterimages formed from extreme speed but actual bodies. Every Feng Lin was identical in terms of clothes and dressing. They all came before a fan-shaped sword case and pulled out a sword. In a split moment, there were 9 Feng Lins standing in front of Yi Yun, each with a sword in hand. For this battle, let's begin with 9 swords. The 9 Feng Lins held up their swords and a row of flashes from the ice blue sword's ice fragment cracks was reflected, creating a dazzling scene. Yi Yun, this is a water elemental mirror image. Song Yan's Yuan Qi transmission rang in Yi Yun's ear. Oh? Water elemental mirror image? Yi Yun was shocked. The water elemental laws of the 5 elemental laws was a law that had multiple transformations. Different warriors would end up with completely different insights when they tried to understand the water elemental laws. For example, Feng Lin was currently manipulating the mirror-like properties of water. Others would use the water elemental healing properties, the water elemental defensive properties, water elemental attacks, or water elemental elixir refinement. Every realm, when completely understood, could give rise to a top expert, or a talent many factions would woo to fill a support role. At this moment, the 9 Feng Lins formed a circle, enclosing Yi Yun in the center. Yi Yun knew exactly which one that was Feng Lin's actual body, but identifying which one did not have much meaning to it. The water elemental mirror images were not used to confuse the enemy but they were used to kill. Jade Maiden 9 Swords Array. All 9 Feng Lins moved together. Their motions were uniform as 4 swords stabbed at Yi Yun's head. Yi Yun brandished his saber, warding off the 4 swords. However, at this moment, from between the bodies of those 4 girls came another 4 sword attacks that stabbed forward like venomous snakes. The other 4 girls were behind the initial 4 girls. They coordinated their attacks and their sword techniques were extremely precise. Yi Yun had not yet recovered from brandishing his saber, so he was unable to do anything but use his minute subtlety movement technique to dodge to the side, surviving the second round of attacks. However, at this moment, another Feng Lin came attacking out from thin air. This Feng Lin was the real Feng Lin. Autumn Waters asterisk of a sword. Feng Lin's sword slashed out. In the sky, her Yuan Qi formed into the phantom image of rippling autumn waters with the setting sun shining as the sky darkened in the golden-lit sparkling autumn lakes. It was extremely beautiful. This sword's beautiful scene was intoxicating, but Yi Yun knew that behind the beautiful scene, there was deadly killing intent. Yi Yun gathered an amount of yuan qi as the phantom image of a saber mountain in the midst of a sea of blood appeared behind him, as if a sure hell had entered the human realm. This phantom image was in deep contrast with Feng Lin's autumn water sword image. Sabertooth's 32 words, killing at its core. Yi Yun's killing intent exploded as his saber beam was stained blood red. Red yuan qi gushed out, breaking the autumn water sunset in front of him apart. Clang! The saber and sword clashed, issuing a clear ring. The strong impact made both Feng Lin and Yi Yun retreat backwards. With a thought, Feng Lin used her Jade Maiden 12 swords. Shoo! 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 Another 3 female figures flew out and, with a chime from the sword cases, 3 swords flew out and entered into the hands of the 3 girls. These 3 girls attacked Yi Yun, sending another 3 swords stabbing right at Yi Yun's face. At this moment, Yi Yun held his saber back. Seeing the non-stop attacks from the water elemental mirror images, Yi Yun's eyes were filling with killing intent. He bit the tip of his tongue as he gathered yuan qi. Taiya's sacred technique. Boom! Yi Yun's radiant sun qi exploded, and behind him, the phantom image of the Tang Valley formed. Yi Yun slashed with his saber, which now contained the radiant sun's power. The Sabertooth's 32 words, reigning supreme. The flames burned as the pure yang yuan qi surged. The sky above the arena was immediately dyed golden by the pure yang flames, as if a sun had fallen into the human realm. Pang! 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 The 3 closest girls exploded in front of the radiant sun, turning into water vapor. Under the pure yang flames, they instantly evaporated. 3 swords fell to the ground. With his attack succeeding, without pause, he and his saber flew out in a beam. His target was the fan-shaped sword case that was erected on the ground. He could tell that the core of Feng Lin's Jade Maiden sword array was the large sword case, so Yi Yun wanted to destroy the sword case's power. Seeing Yi Yun's actions, Feng Lin grunted coldly. Jade Maiden sword array, 10,000 swords firing in unity. In that instant, Feng Lin's sword case shot out 10,000 beams of golden light. Each golden beam was a beam made out of sword qi. The remaining 6 swords issued a clear ring as they left the scabbard and directly flew towards Yi Yun. The 6 swords flew together with 10,000 sword beams. Yi Yun constricted his pupils and quickly retreated. There was no way to dodge such a dense amount of sword beams. As Yi Yun retreated, he brandished his saber to break the attack. Sha! 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 The saber beam directly clashed with the sword beams while Yi Yun's protective yuan qi was constantly punctured by the swords. At this moment, Feng Lin's main body attacked Yi Yun from behind. Jade Maiden 18 swords. Feng Lin circulated her yuan qi to an extreme as 18 mirror images simultaneously appeared. Even the 3 mirror images that had previously been destroyed by Yi Yun's radiant sun qi were once again recreated. As long as Feng Lin had any yuan qi left, she would be able to constantly create new mirror images. Out of the 18 Feng Lins, 12 of them wielded swords while the other 6 were using their fingers as swords. A cold beam emerged out from their slender fingers that were no different from swords. The 10,000 sword beams, together with the 18 Feng Lins, attacked Yi Yun from the front and the back. At this moment, everyone in the audience were highly focused on the match as they held their breaths. Yi Yun had no way of dodging. He sent his thoughts to the purple crystal and activated the pure yang spirit's energy. Immediately, all the pure yang qi around him rushed towards Yi Yun. Pure yang spirit, explode. Boom! In the purple crystal, what was a quietly burning pure yang spirit now completely exploded. It was as if a sun was born inside Yi Yun's body. By using the Heaven-Earth Yuan Qi, Yi Yun was able to attack in all directions. Even the phantom image of the Tang Valley behind Yi Yun exploded. The flames burned, repelling Feng Lin's 17 mirror images and completely shattering the 10,000 sword beams. Even so, Feng Lin's main body broke through the pure yang burning flames, but her sword's momentum was greatly reduced. The main body's sword flew directly at Yi Yun's heart. Cha! The sword sheath stabbed through Yi Yun's protective Yuan Qi, heavily impacting the pure yang energy. Yi Yun flew backwards, like a kite, flying diagonally out of the Divine Wilderness stage. Feng Lin's attack had lost all of its momentum, so she was still unable to hurt Yi Yun at all. Yi Yun pressed his chest lightly as he adjusted his breathing and his Yuan Qi as he looked up at Feng Lin. At this moment, Feng Lin's long hair was a mess. There were many tears on her clothes. Even with the protection of her protective Yuan Qi, her combat attire could not withstand the powerful saber Qi. And behind her, the 17 mirror images had completely exploded into a pool of water. Yi Yun's attack was powered by the pure Yang spirit's energy. He may have expended quite a bit of energy, but he finally managed to break Feng Lin's Jade Maiden 18 Swords array. Around the Divine Wilderness stage, the audience stared on in silence as the battle was so intense. In comparison, the battles before were similarly intense, but they were, after all, only sword and saber attacks. There was plenty of aggression and blood, but they were not as magnificent as this. They were unlike this battle. The gorgeous lights and the picturesque phenomenon formed in the sky was a feast for their eyes. Autumn waters is used to describe the limpid eyes of a maiden, tying with the concept of a jade maiden. Chapter 330, The Sword Appears. The audience around the Divine Wilderness stage were staring unblinkingly at the stage, afraid to miss any of the exciting scenes. The atmosphere in the entire arena seemed to freeze. Especially the Tai A Divine City warriors, who were even more nervous. At this moment, only Yi Yun could fight for their Tai A Divine City. And until now, the battle between Yi Yun and Feng Lin was a close call. It was hard to predict what the outcome of the battle would be. You really are impressive. Feng Lin looked at Yi Yun and showed some appreciation of him. Unfortunately, your cultivation level limits you, dooming you to fail in this battle. When Feng Lin said this, before Yi Yun could respond, the Tai A Divine City warriors offstage immediately roused up. This Feng Lin sure can brag. Wasn't her 18 chicks array or whatever broken by Yi Yun? Right, she couldn't even beat him with 18 people. What's she so CKY about? As Yi Yun had created a series of victories previously, many Tai A Divine City warriors had absolute confidence in Yi Yun. Although the outcome of the battle was currently not clear, they still hoped that Yi Yun would be able to create a miracle at the very last moment. Some of the Tai A Divine City warriors were already standing up, jeering at Feng Lin. However, Feng Lin was not affected by it and simply turned a deaf ear. Feng Lin continued, Yi Yun, the accomplishments in your saber techniques is shocking. As for your understanding of the Tai A sacred technique, it far exceeds your peers. Unfortunately, your cultivation level has not broken into the Yuan Foundation realm, so you are lacking in Yuan Qi. Your struggle in gathering Yuan Qi could be seen when you were dealing with my Jade Maiden 18 Swords array. Feng Lin's words pointed Yi Yun's weakness out in the previous round. When Feng Lin attacked with 18 people, there was no gap in her offense, and the attack was like a relentless rain. Yi Yun could handle the first wave of attacks, but the second wave would follow closely behind. This meant that Yi Yun had no choice but to forcefully gather his Yuan Qi. This created extreme pressure on his body and meridians. If Yi Yun was in the Yuan Foundation realm, the depth of his Yuan Qi would prevent that from happening. Even the Tai A Divine City warriors had to admit that what Feng Lin said was true. But so what if it was the truth? Yi Yun might still have hidden moves. At the final critical moment, he could conquer and secure victory. In the audience stands, there were Tai A Divine City warriors beginning to shout words of encouragement to Yi Yun. However, at this moment, Feng Lin grabbed the sword handle on the opened-up sword case with a single hand. Oh? Could it be? Yi Yun's heart thumped. After Feng Lin's sword case was opened, there were 9 swords on both sides of it. All the hilts were pointing upwards, like that of a opened peacock's tail. However, the fact of the matter was that right in the middle of the sword case was another sword hilt. Yi-Yun had previously thought that the sword hilt was the handle to the sword case, but it did not seem so anymore. Clang! With a clear ring, Fong Lin pulled out a huge sword from the top of the sword case. The sword's blade was 156 centimeters long. It was as wide as a palm, which meant that it was much larger than the other 18 swords. This heavy sword was more suited for a stout man. It looked quite jarring to see Fong Lin holding it. This 19th sword's name is the Angel Sword, and it is also my last sword, Fong Lin said as she threw the sword into the air. And at this moment, Fong Lin's body began glowing, as if countless pieces of silver was shimmering. In this light, a light entity in the shape of a young girl appeared from within her. Her arms were covering her chest and her body was curled up. And on her back was a pair of wings. Pa! The girl spread out her wings and they spanned nearly 3 meters, covering Fong Lin completely. The girl stood up from the light. She seemed to have hatched out from a cocoon. Finally, the angel sword floated in front of the girl. She slowly grabbed the angel sword and pointed it at Yi-Yun. This winged girl was more than 2 meters in height. The huge sword suited her very well. Aspect totem? Yi-Yun constricted his pupils. From the beginning of the battle till now, Fong Lin had not conjured her aspect totem. Yi-Yun never expected that Fong Lin's aspect totem was the shape of a girl. Looking at the girl, besides the wings behind her back, she looked identical to Fong Lin. Phew! 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 With a soft sound, water elemental mirror images began appearing beside Fong Lin. A row of Fong Lins stood. And in the air, there was a winged girl totem. 19 swords. Seeing Fong Lin's aspect totem and her forceful stance, all the Taiya Divine City warriors who had previously cursed at Fong Lin immediately shut up. Against such a Fong Lin, they too began to lack confidence. There's such an aspect totem? The Taiya Divine City warriors looked at each other. Amongst the aspect totems, they had seen beast-like ones the most. They had also seen aspect totems in the shape of weapons, such as sabers, swords, spears and halberds. However, it was very rare to see a humanoid aspect totem. For a person's aspect totem to resemble themselves identically, and with another pair of wings, was shocking. It was like the mythical legends of gods. The winged girl had a listless expression. She seemed to ignore everything, including Yi-Yun. Her wings were gently flapping as a layer of hazy light covered her. The sword in her hand shone a cold beam that threatened one's soul. Yi-Yun, Wenyu, Xu Xiaoran and company, who were sitting in the participant benches, could not help but be worried. One could tell a warrior's strength from their forceful stance. The current Fong Lin was as such. The Taiya Divine City warriors were all silent. Those who were standing up began to sit back into their seats as they looked nervously at Yi-Yun. And opposing the Taiya Divine City audience was the Yunlong Divine Kingdom audience who started cheering. Many of them had never gotten the opportunity to see Fong Lin display her ultimate combat power. In such a state, Fong Lin gave off the feeling of a fairy landing in the human realm. Breaking my Jade Maiden mirror images was useless too. My Yuan Qi is thicker than yours. I can conjure an endless number of Jade Maiden mirror images. As for your Yuan Qi, can you sustain it? Fong Lin's cold voice rang as she pointed the icy marked sword at Yi-Yun. A total of 19 swords uniformly did the same. Yi-Yun's face turned serious at being pointed at by 19 swords. Fong Lin was indeed very strong. Yi-Yun knew very clearly that with the powers that he had displayed, it was impossible to defeat Fong Lin. Yi-Yun was even considering if he should conjure his aspect totem. At this stage, Yi-Yun could no longer hide the fact that he had conjured a golden crow totem. If he needed to explain it to Song Yin and company, it might be complicated, but it wasn't like he was unable to explain it away. As long as he retold the story of how he encountered a golden crow species fighting a pure yang spirit in Fallen Stargate and then used the protective charm Su Jie had given him, then he could explain how he killed the golden crow species. It was reasonable. The only thing that was incredulous was how he managed to master the 10,000 beast totem. Yi Yun's aspect totem may be powerful, but it had a problem, that was it expended too much yuan qi. Feng Lin was right. Yi Yun's cultivation level was his weakness. Yi Yun estimated that using his lacking yuan qi to support his golden crow totem only allowed him to use about 1 to 2 attacks. After conjuring the golden crow totem, even if he defeated Feng Lin, Yi Yun would likely take days to recover his yuan qi. But, this overall group competition was one where his opponents would fight him one by one. Later on, Yi Yun still had to face the other opponents from the Yunlong 72 pagodas, especially the youth in black. That youth's strength was extremely mysterious, that made him worry. In an extremely weak condition, it would be difficult for him to carry on fighting against the youth in black. Yi Yun realized that it was extremely hard for him to win the overall group championship alone. Regardless, he had to do the best he could. Everything else was left to Providence. Yi Yun, now I will combine all my 19 swords together. Let me warn you that, due to my present cultivation level and also it being recently learned, I am unable to control the strength of this move well once it is used. It might cost you your life. As a genius, there is no need to risk your life for an alliance tournament. It's still not too late to admit defeat now. With a sword in hand, Feng Lin looked elegant with her hair fluttering in the gently wind. Yi Yun looked at Feng Lin and took a deep breath. He touched his interspatial ring and a purple sword appeared in Yi Yun's hand. Sword. Everyone in the audience was stunned seeing Yi Yun take out a sword. Wasn't Yi Yun a saber user? Why did he pull out a sword? Yi Yun looked at the purple sword. Its blade was 4 feet long and emitted a cold shimmer. Song Yan had taken Yi Yun to the Taiya Divine City Armory to choose this sword. It was one of the highest quality swords prepared for cultivators in the armory. Its name was Distinguished Light. Even experts like Qin Haotian was unable to use the sword to its greatest capability. Indeed, Yi Yun gently touched the sword blade and seemed to be speaking to himself. There are some moves whose power is difficult to control. Although it is not a life and death match, it might still cause death. After all, in a final confrontation, when going all out, one cannot guarantee how much strength is used when using a move that you have not perfectly grasped. You may have one, but so have I. When Yi Yun said these words, the entire audience went into silence. What did Yi Yun just say? But so have I? By saying that, didn't he mean that he too had a move that he found it hard to control, that might even take the life of Feng Lin? Feng Lin was so strong, yet Yi Yun could actually take her life? Could it be related to this sword? Is that really true? Yi Yun had always used his saber, so this made people find it hard to believe that he could have a more powerful move using a sword. After all, since ancient times, warriors would usually specialize in one weapon. In the history they knew, it was extremely rare for a person to train in both sword and saber. You have used a sword before? Feng Lin's eyebrows frowned slightly as she looked suspiciously at Yi Yun. Before, she had some information on Yi Yun. In the Taiya Divine City, his weapon had always been a long saber. I've never used it in the past, but now I have to use it. I have a vague understanding of this sword attack. I too am not confident I can use this attack to its full extent. And you will be my first opponent to face my sword attack. After Yi Yun said this, Feng Lin's eyebrows knitted even closer. Author's note: Cocoon will need to go out tomorrow. As the place Cocoon stays is quite remote and there's no airport, I will need to wake up at 5 to 6 a.m., reaching my destination at 2 to 3 p.m. It's quite terrible. I've mentioned it previously that there's an author activity organized by Qi Dian at the end of the month. I will be out for several days, so tomorrow's updates will be late at